What are we talking about today? I know I suggested something. What was it?
I believe that it was a question about what it means to take on the mantle of ministerial authority.
Oh, yes. Yes, I've been sick for the last couple of weeks with a cold. It was not COVID. I got tested with a cold and then a sinus infection, which you'll be able to hear tonight probably. And so I don't always remember everything that happened over the last few feverish days. And the interesting thing is, I think I think I can share this. I think Erien recently passed the MFC. I think that's the Ministerial Formation Committee. We shared that in a previous 10-minute talk. That's the UUA ordaining credentialing body. That's the right way to say that. And I'll go in front of them in about a year or so. And I just started an intern ministry.
Yep.
So we've both just passed different thresholds that happen at slightly different times. I'm about a year behind Erien. And so tonight,
I did.
We're just gonna. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I did my internship last year, and now I'm in a learning fellowship where I'm in ministerial. It's kind of like being an intern, but a little bit different. So
it's like an advanced internship.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
I would argue.
Yes, it's different, but you can be ordained doing a learning fellowship,
or you can be unordained,
or an unordained. It's just different. But yeah, I did the thing that Erik is doing now. I did a year ago.
Right, and it's something that you usually do while you're still in school, sometimes afterwards, never really before, at least in the UUA.
No, you have to have at least 2 years, I do believe, of school done.
You do it in your second year.
Yeah, second year, third year, fourth year.
Something like that, whenever. I didn't do it then. I'm in my last semester. It's been 5 years and I finally started one. Oh, excuse me. And I'm doing it at a UCC church, not a UU church.
Yes, that is an interesting difference. Although they're both Congregationalists.
They are Congregationalists, yes, both of them. Although technically Unitarians walked away from the Congregationalists, not the other way around.
Yeah, but what that means is that the churches are run the same.
Basically.
There's some nuanced differences, but the way that congregations hold the power of making decisions and choices, not the big national churches.
Well, and actually the way that you go through the credentialing process in the UUA, that's the Ministerial Formation Committee, right? Or Fellowshipping Committee. Which one is it? I never remember. And then that's the UUA, it's the Ministerial. Oh, I was just
Committee.
I was going to say the Ministerial Effing Committee.
Fellowship Committee.
Maybe I don't beep that out. No, let's just edit that out. I don't want that going in this video.
Okay.
Are you sad now? Because it isn't because in the UCC it's called the Committee on Ministry.
Yes, UCC's Committee on Ministry. But how do they, I'm just curious real quick. So in the UUA, you go to the MFC and they give you a stamp of approval.
It's a one and done, basically.
Not because I am in this liminal space where I've passed the MFC, but I'm not officially ordained until a congregation ordains me.
That's a distinction without a difference, because
it isn't.
It's the same. It's the same thing.
The power to ordain still sits
with the congregation. Yes, and neither one of us is technically ordained, but you are actually further along because once the MFC, you are in preliminary fellowship.
Yes. Via
the MFC as the credentialing body of the UUA. Yes. Unitarian Universalist Association. And I have not gone in front of the MFC, nor have I gone in front of the Committee on Ministry in the United Church of Christ, which I'm planning on doing. I'm seeking dual ordination, but first, due to timing, is the UUA, the MFC, and then 2 years after that, probably is the committee is hopefully, although it can be a long process, the Committee on Ministry in the UCC.
So really what comes down to is I won't use the title Reverend yet.
Good, because I'd be hurt. No, not really. I look forward to the day you get ordained.
I probably won't use the title after either. He's sighing at me.
Every intro and piece of body copy that I write for the channel, giving away a little secret there, I'm going to put Reverend Erien.
So that actually leads us right into what it means to, what does it mean to be in that position? And there are times where I joke, but there are times where it's probably more appropriate for me to eventually use a title or an honorific.
Absolutely.
And then times where it's not. I am somebody who likes to decenter myself, probably to a fault. You can agree with me.
I agree. It'd be helpful if sometimes you would use some of your titles for the channel and elsewhere.
I do have a PhD, and I very rarely, and it's funny, the funniest part about all of this is that when I encounter someone who has a PhD or has an honorific, like reverend or chaplain or whatever their honorific is, I am so respectful of that I sometimes go past the point when they're like, just call me whatever, call me Scott. And I'm like, I'm so uncomfortable right now. So it's ironic in a way, but that's part of I think that's part of the crux of putting on ministerial authority. I would love to hear more about your new.
Well, and it's different because you already spent a solid year as an intern minister, as well as doing chaplaincy in various forms,
yes,
whether or not
yes.
in an educational setting or in the real
Hospital
world.
And yes.
You're and so there's a ministerial authority that's granted to you as a chaplain, whether student or professional,
yes,
that just exists because people make assumptions about it.
Yeah. 1,800 plus hours in a clinical setting has changed how
and hours outside of that.
Yes.
And so that is, I think you do carry a certain amount, even though you may not want to put titles before or after your name. Mm-hmm. You have had that experience, and my experience to this point has been as a director of religious education in a UU church, which is not a ministerial position.
But deserves more respect than they get.
Go ahead, sorry.
But deserves more respect than they get in most congregations.
It should. Mm-hmm. And many UU churches don't think about it as that sort of position.
Professional.
But that's okay. And it isn't all. But if you're going to hire a minister as a DRE, a credentialed minister, the odds are they have a master's of divinity, and they're going to request the title. They're going to call themselves reverend because they've earned that. And anyways, now we're like digressing into something that's neither here nor there, because I'm just saying I don't carry as much time in associated roles. Plus, I've not got in front of the NFC yet.
That's true.
So what am I doing?
Pause.
I'm an intern minister. I've been one for 3 weeks now.
Okay, so we're gonna pause and then I'm gonna come back. I just got a call on the emergency line. Can you give me 5 minutes?
Just pause.
Yeah.
Just like that. But... Well, that was a change, a switch.
I had to take an emergency call.
Would you say, I'm not interviewing you or anything, but would you say that is part of the switch in terms of from being like, at one point I was just a congregation member, but the idea that you have to take an emergency call in the middle of doing something else, and it supersedes all other things.
Yes. I kind of joked about that. Like there's the meme about like when you're an adult and something happens and you know, like a crisis happens. And sometimes you look around for another more adulty adult. And then you realize, oh no, I'm the adult. Sometimes it feels like that a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, I was talking about the fact I just started an internship. Yes, and it's at a UCC church, so it's a little bit different in terms of how they do things in UU spaces, and I'm learning about that. But at the end of the day, the concepts of assuming some sort of ministerial authority are very, very similar. and I suppose it's different for everyone who becomes an intern, how they approach it. And I don't really want to get into a discussion about, I can only discuss like how it is, excuse me, for me.
Mhm.
But I view it as a learning opportunity. And yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
I think that's a healthy way to approach it, but like, so in addition to that, like, I wrote down some personal goals for myself early on, and then I would look back at them. They were in my monthly planner. I'm old school and I write everything down, and they were in the first page of the planner for that year. And I would flip back to them anytime I was distressed or anytime I was having a moment of like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. And those goals with my notes that ended up kind of forming around them ended up being a really good focus for me that kept me going in like some of the harder moments. And having said that, I will also say that what drives me, some people call it a call, some people, they have all sorts of words for it, but what drives me is I really just wanted to be the best prepared for the people I was going to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my foundational goal. And that seems to be sustaining me even now. So I don't know what your foundational stuff is, Eric, but what's driving you?
Well, I have the MFC paperwork, not the MFC, the Ministerial Credentialing Office, the MCO. I have that paperwork due in 2 weeks. And actually today I just put together my intern committee.
Yay.
I told them they didn't really have to do very much other than meet once in a while, once a month, and provide feedback. And I'm doing kind of an interesting committee, I think, for a UCC space in that I'm making it as multi-religious as possible, given that I'm I may get asked to do another internship. You never know. I don't know what the Committee on Ministry in the UCC is going to ask me to do, but for the purposes of the MFC, I officially have an ex-UU who's been a member of a UU church that I'm familiar with. I have a Buddhist. I have a Unitarian Christian. I have a Trinitarian Christian. And I want to say there's another person. Well, that's 4. It might only be 4 right now.
But you also have 2 different supervisors. So even though
I do have 2 different supervisors.
Yeah, you're at a UCC church. So you have your minister there. Is she a reverend or minister? I don't know.
That's the same thing.
I know, but
she has an MDiv. She went to Claremont.
No, I'm from a UCC. I was like, wait, I don't.
Oh no, the difference. No, we're gonna talk a little bit about pastor versus
that's
minister or reverend, and the difference between those words, because the word pastor is not used much in UU spaces as much as it is in other spaces. But that's neither here nor there.
You have a UU minister supervisor as well.
I do, absolutely. We're meeting. I want to say it might be this Wednesday for our monthly meeting. Yes, so I'm excited about that. That person's name will go on the paperwork. I'm gonna put like a slash next to their name and I don't know which order I'm gonna put them in. Probably the UU minister first, for the purposes of the Ministerial Credentialing Office of the UUA, because I know they all watch this, and I love you all at the UUA. And so we're gonna put both of their names there, and there's probably a way to do it. I haven't looked at the paperwork recently, but I got to get it done. Oh, and tomorrow is my ministerial intern reflection class at Star King, so we're going to be doing that.
Class. I forgot.
So I'll be able to share some good news, which is I have a committee now, and there may be like 1 or 2 more people that I add to it. We'll see. But being that it's a fairly small church, people are stretched thin. Those who are willing to do things. And I really wanted a broad representation of, within this Christian church, the different religious identities that actually exist as a subset of, they're all members.
Yes.
There's nobody on the committee who's not a member of this United Church of Christ church. And they all have different religious identity. Well, they don't. I mean, a Trinitarian Christian and a Unitarian Christian, well, both fit within the constraints of progressive Christianity.
Yeah.
But then someone who self-identifies as a Buddhist is multi-religious. And someone who is an ex-UU could be any number of different
There's a lot there.
religious identities, spiritual identities.
My committee was amazing. I will say that. Like, I'll be
Nice.
curious to see how it goes as it goes along for you, because I was
Oh.
really blessed.
Well, and we should explain what the committee's job is. Like,
Oh, wow.
like they're not judges and jurors.
Different committee. That's the MS. No, I'm just kidding. That was funny. Come on.
Why did you go there?
Well, because they do judge you, whether they.
Well, I know, but we don't need
You
to
go
say
in
that
and they-
explicitly.
Well, you go in and they'd say good or not good, or you can go on and here's some things to help you grow, and like. But at the end of the day, they're still grading you.
They are, but the internship committee, their job is actually to walk with you through the process and to give you feedback as you are going through the process, and month over month, or however often you meet, to interact with you. They observe you on Sundays. They observe you at whatever else you do. In my case, it will be probably teaching classes. They observe you at all the different church events. And if they say, at this one church event, you didn't have a very ministerial presence. It seemed like you got really frustrated at the annual church sale with that customer who was arguing about what the price was of something. They might give me that feedback after next Saturday. I don't think they actually will, but they might, right? And that's the thing. Is they're there to observe you in your day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. And they're very.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think the idea of spreading that sort of observation out, one, over the entire course of your internship, and two, over people who are going to encounter you in more casual ways than your direct supervisors. Because my meetings with my internship supervisor were awesome in their own way, but they were more like technical and very specific. My meetings with my committee were more about like, just as Erik was saying, the day-to-day, the nuances of what it means on a day-to-day level of the growth. And ministerial authority was a big one. Like my tendency to decenter myself kind of came up in a lot of their commentary. They didn't use that language, but.
Now you're oversharing.
Well, no. I mean, in terms of.
I was talking a hypothetical.
Oh, no, I'll share. I know. I don't have any shame in that.
Well, we haven't had a meeting yet. Just wait. I might be sipping tea after that.
It's funny. Come on. It's okay.
So we were talking about titles. And the interesting thing is, because in the past, like I've been around people who use the word pastor a lot because they were adjunct to Unitarian Universalist spaces, like through school. And, I'll be in class with somebody and they'll use the word pastor. And it's not something that in a normal Unitarian Universalist church or fellowship or society that you hear used to ascribe any kind of ministerial authority. Mm-hmm. But in other spaces like the UCC or a Methodist church, or maybe not an Episcopalian church, I think they might use the word priest, but they might also use the word pastor. I'm trying to think about different students I've run into. But within different spaces, certainly within non-denominational Christian spaces, which are adjunct in some ways to Congregationalist Christian churches like the UCC, they use the word pastor all the time. In our church, we have a variety of people who fill the roles of pastor and are called that, but not as a title. It's like what you do as a job. So I'm the intern minister. I do not have an MDiv. I am not a reverend, but I am acting as the youth pastor because I have experience doing that. The church needs that role filled. And so if someone were to refer to me as the youth pastor in the church, it ascribes a certain amount of ministerial authority.
Yep.
But then I would have to explain when they say, oh, so you're Reverend Erik. And I would say, well, I'm the intern minister. I have not gotten my MDiv yet. And I've not been ordained. So technically, no, I'm an intern. I'm still in school, but I am trained to do religious education work. And I've been a DRE in past lives. And this is my role here. I'm the youth pastor.
So that brings up something that I've always found really interesting. So with the term, not exactly the same, but the same in a way, the term chaplain is used in interfaith settings, hospitals, like end of life care hospice, like there's, and when you're training in that, they tell you explicitly to use the word. So you're brand new, you've only
Chaplain.
Chaplain. So you walk in, I'm the chaplain. And part of that is to take on that mantle as you're learning. It's one of the few places I've heard explicitly that you do that. So pastor sounds almost like a similar title to that. Like you need to take it on to do that particular role, perhaps. No?
So Unitarian Universalism is, I would say, a little more, is the correct word, stringent. I'm not going to say unique, but stringent about how we assign titles to people and how we assign authority. We don't generally call our DREs youth pastors.
No, we call them
But
DREs.
for all intents and purposes, in a Unitarian Universalist space, I would be occupying the role of director of religious education.
Yes.
But they wouldn't call me a pastor because that would assign a ministerial authority. On the other hand, within the UCC, you can be called to ministry on many different levels. And not every level requires you to go get an MDiv. But if you want to put the word reverend in front of your name,
that's an MDiv.
Or minister, you should have an MDiv. That's kind of, I'm not going to call it a game, but at the end of the day, it is kind of, you have to, you have to do the things.
Ethics, well, let me start with that. The ethics classes we're required to take shape and change that professional authority. Somebody can be called to do something, and I love that they're called to do that thing, but that should be balanced against all the protections and ethics and all of there's a whole lot to an MDiv that people are not aware of.
Well, and being part of, but I will say this, being a member of the UUMA, even if you're not an ordained minister, you're still held to similar, if not entirely the same set of ethical guidelines. Essentially, you are, like, for all intents and purposes, if you're like, well, I'm a candidate or an aspirant, and because I'm not a minister yet, I can run wild. Well,
not really.
On some, as a student, you're not as a student at school, they explain this the first day of at least my orientation at Stark King. There's not this, someone asked specifically, like, are we held to the same rules as a minister would be?
It's a good question.
And they said, well, you're not a minister. Why would you be? That being said, as an intern minister,
you are.
The standard is the same as a minister. And if you were to do something that goes against safe congregations policies or UUMA guidelines, good luck for you in front of the MFC having to explain why this thing happened that is now, I'm not saying, like, it's now public knowledge, and you're essentially in front of them being called onto the carpet for misbehavior at the same time you're trying to get through the process. So I would argue that that would be a really bad position to put. Yeah, why? Why mess that up?
No, I yes.
Or is this what we were going to talk about? Because now we're delving into like much further. We're going down the rabbit hole here.
That's what we do. We can bring it back. Ministerial.
No, we don't have to bring it back because that's the truth. And
it's like complicated.
You are now in preliminary fellowship because you passed the MFC.
I am.
So there's and we can debate all day the semantics of what you can call yourself now. But at the end of the day, it's a semantic argument. As soon as a congregation votes to ordain you, you're ordained. As soon as the ceremony happens, you're that much more ordained, but you're already in preliminary fellowship as far as the MFC is concerned. And the difference would be being an intern minister. We haven't achieved that. I'm actually not a candidate yet. I have one step left. I have to do the vocational assessment.
Yes.
Which is something that's required in both the UUA and the UCC. It's maybe not with the same thing, so I might have to do it twice and pay it twice, whatever. But that'll
be fun.
Well, maybe they'll accept the one. Hopefully I don't have to do it twice, but if I have to, I have to. And actually in the UCC, they call it a psychological assessment there, which is to me, arguably the bulk of what the vocational assessment is actually.
Keep changing it. It really,
whatever.
Really what they're doing is they're looking to see if you're a narcissistic personality, how well you know yourself, if there are any scary flags. Again, this is that difference between calling yourself maybe a pastor or DRE or having that level of professional whatever versus a minister who's going to have an authority when they instantly walk into the room that needs to be trusted and needs to be respected and also needs to be taken care of.
So you bring up an important point, what we call ourselves, right? So if someone were to ask me, I would say my role at the church, the easiest way to explain it to another UCC church, not necessarily a UU church, but I'm at a UCC church, so I'll use different language. And I might say I'm like their DRE, that's the primary role of my internship, but I'm doing a lot of other things as well. And participating in basically every church activity, because need people. So I'm doing everything.
Well, and DREs are invaluable. They're a backbone of
absolutely. That's a whole other episode of a 10-minute talk is the value of DREs, because you put two ex-DREs in a room, they're going to tell you all about how good DREs are.
True story.
True story. We're getting there very quickly here. But the point being is for me to go to another, let's say I go to the local UCC camp, Pilgrim Pines, which is 2 ridges over in the San Gregorio Mountains from de Benneville Pines. De
Benneville, yes.
Named after George de Benneville, arguably the first Universalist in America. That's neither here nor there. We can debate that all day long about John Murray. But that's not the point. The point is these 2 camps are close. If you go to Pilgrim Pines and you're walking around and talking to people and they say, oh, you're from Simi Valley. Are you a member there? Yeah, I'm a member, but I'm also an intern minister. Oh, what are you doing? I might say, I'm the youth pastor. And that's a easy way to communicate a large part of what I do there and some of the professional expertise I bring into my role as an intern. But I would never introduce myself in that, oh, I'm a minister at the UCC church in Simi Valley. I'm Reverend Erik. Oh, where's your stole? Well, yeah, I don't have one yet. Where's your collar? Yeah, I'm uncomfortable wearing it because I haven't been ordained. Like that's the difference between the title, it being a title and it being a job description.
Vocation, yeah.
It's a vocation. And so, there can be people doing jobs in churches who are, oh, that's Pastor so-and-so, and they may not have an MDiv. And they may not be in an MDiv program. And it doesn't matter because they're called into work and they're doing ministry. And in a Christian church like the UCC, some of which are very liberal, like Unitarian Universalist churches, that's what you end up getting called as a job title. I'm a community pastor instead of community minister.
I've wondered, because for years, I would encounter people in different, and this is the thing about working in interfaith settings is you kind of have to embrace because you sometimes you have to ask, what does that mean? And you don't mean it. You're just trying to figure out what they do, where they fall. People think, oh, is it rack and stacking like somebody's? No, it's trying to figure out what they do, what they mean by what they're saying. Because they're using different vocabulary or using the same word. I often encounter people who are like, I'm a chaplain. And then they immediately turn around and do things that are like only Christian. Like they start pushing prayer and they do things that are not chaplain.
I'm going to say this. There are most of because I'm always, looking around at different opportunities to do CPE and whatnot. And CPE can be done within a professional setting, like being a hospice chaplain. A lot of those jobs it's preferred if you have an MDiv or you're most of the way through it. And I'm most of the way through mine. What would I be called if I were a chaplain at a hospice right now? Would I be Reverend Eric? No,
No,
because I'm not ordained yet.
They'd call you chaplain.
They could call me chaplain.
I will say this: insurance purposes, and most hospitals require the MDiv.
Absolutely.
Volunteer
And I'm
might not
but-
be, but
Well, if you're doing CPE, obviously you don't have clinical pastoral education, CPE. You don't have to have an MDiv because you're a student. And so I'll be doing that soon, hopefully. And
yay.
yeah. And but I think the point is I don't know about what you've heard people call themselves as far as chaplain goes.
I've heard so many
it can be
things.
used informally.
Mhm.
Like you can be a protest chaplain and you don't have an MDiv, but you're at a protest and you're providing chaplaincy services, and you might be the best thing going. And the idea that you wouldn't provide chaplaincy and you're wearing a collar because you don't have an MDiv yet, but people there need you, arguably, it made more power to you. And we provide, but the other thing would be is that we may run into, as students, before we've even gone through CP, we may run into situations where some of our education is helpful in certain situations. We fulfill the role of chaplain, and no one's ever going to call us chaplain in that role.
No, it's a really interesting, and I would love to hear if you've made it this far in our video that's very meta about like about the formation process. I would love to hear what other people think, because it used to bother me when someone would call themselves a chaplain. What bothered me was not that they called themselves the chaplain. It was that I then assigned them mentally the authority and all of the ethics and all of the training that came with being in that role as somebody who was not a student. You can almost always tell a student, chaplain, and among we can find each other. But what I'm talking about is somebody who will tell you that they are a chaplain. And then you sit down and they're like, yeah, I took at most a 4-hour training.
Mm.
And I remember going, huh. And then they insist on pushing only their version of like that interfaith piece is really, really important to me, and for chaplains in particular.
You are particularly aware of that.
Oh, I'm very aware of. And I mean, I worked with police chaplaincy. I've done hospital chaplaincy. I did the COVID wards. I have a little bit of different experience. Did the children's cancer ward, but
you and other forms of chaplaincy. And I think that you come into this with a different perspective than a lot of people, because you had professional experience as a chaplain and a chaplain's assistant that a lot of people coming into an MDiv program have not had yet.
True. I kind of guard that one. But at the same time, I also think that pastors, if they come in and they say they're a pastor, I still think that they should be honored in that role. Like if that's how you choose to designate.
Well, this brings up a whole other 10-minute talk, which is what is a calling?
Another one.
A different one. What is a calling? Because I think we don't always, I think that I think it has different meanings depending on, and I'm not going to say it's like you use versus the world, but I think the idea of a spiritual calling in UU spaces is a lot different than potentially a calling in other spaces. And so for someone from another space for you to interact with someone from another religious space who says, I'm a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out that they have not gone through the same training that you have gone through, let's say, and I'm not particularly differentiating. They may not have a governing body that says this is a set of standards that we hold you to behaviorally and educationally. Doesn't call into question necessarily their calling.
Yeah, the legitimacy of their call. You have to honor.
Right. And I think that's a whole other discussion that relates to the word pastor. Now, could we have an entire 10-minute talk on the word pastor and what it means? Absolutely. That'd be a fun one.
We're probably way over, and maybe we should sometime. Like when people ask me what I do, I'm like, well, what do you mean? What do I do today? because it can vary. I could have an emergency call one day in the middle of a 10-minute talk.
Yeah.
And the next day I could be writing letters or doing fundraising conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then the day after that, I could be teaching a class on the history of Sufism. Like,
It sounds a lot like being at UCC Simi Valley. Hey, we got a new subscriber today from UCC Simi. I had a discussion and I said, oh, YouTube channel. And lo and behold, they popped up as a subscriber. Thank you, John.
thanks for
Look at that
subscribing.
shout out. If John, if you've gotten this far through this video, I'll buy you coffee.
From the free coffee product coffee hour.
No, like real
Just messing.
coffee. I'll go to actual coffee. You want to get a triple espresso, mocha frappuccino, venti large super thingy? Fine, you're a subscriber. That's how it works.
We're gonna have to edit this, which means more work for me, and I have homework.
No. Just smash it all together. It's cool. We didn't say anything too dumb.
No, I think it's interesting to just talk about the process, though, and I think it's important.
Yeah, I absolutely. Like, we don't hear about this ever.
No, and congregants have no idea. It's truly. I think probably UCC is probably the same. I know in most UU spaces, having attended
No,
any church.
different. Sorry, different.
In UU spaces, in the many congregations I've attended, because military move around. They're completely unaware. They're sort of just this like, okay, you get your MDiv.
Nope.
And somebody gives you a stamp approval and you go to get an ordination. That's about all they know about the general. Like,
let me tell you about my life. Okay. Let me tell you, in February, I'll have been at UCC Simi Valley for a year. I'm sharing a lot here, and I'm saying the word Simi Valley. It's in California. It's in Ventura County. Show up to services if you like what we're saying here. That was an invitation because we need to grow. That's neither here nor there. Point being, I start the discernment process in February of 2022. I've been in discernment with the UUA, with Unitarian Universalism, since February or March 2012, 10 years ago. So what I'm saying is, and my discernment is so I've got an intern committee right now. Remember?
So hold on.
Well, no,
The discernment in the way that we're using it
it's the same thing.
Is yes, and people who
are
not
as an explanation.
Discernment is the process where you mentally make the final decision if you're going into ministry or not.
I wouldn't say it's the final decision because you're in discernment for your whole life.
Yes, and what I'm saying is that if you're going to make the commitment and what path you should be taking early on in the process. And one of the things that makes Erik and I such strong friends is that we both were in discernment for a very long time. Before I made the commitment to the $100,000, which is what an MDiv, like.
I don't know what you just said. I'm ignoring it completely.
Yeah.
The point is this: discernment is the process by which you discern your path in ministry, whether or not it's to go get an MDiv, whether or not it's to be a lay leader in a church, and you don't want to go get an MDiv, whether or not, depending on what faith you're in, your calling might be community ministry that doesn't require an MDiv, but you may be a community pastor for the church that you're at. That's neither here nor there. The point is, I start over again in February 22.
So sorry.
And I do that for a year, and then I start talking to the Committee on Ministry.
But you will already have your MDiv, and you'll be meeting with the UU.
I will be in the process when I'm in discernment with the UCC church. So I'm going to have a discernment committee. I have an internship committee. I'm going to be meeting with the MFC after my internship committee ends. And then I will continue with my discernment committee talking about whether or not I want to be a minister or not. But I'll already be hopefully, I'm not going to cross fingers, knock on wood, because I've got to read, the full 90 books, and I will go in front of the MFC and I will do my best to get a thumbs up and all of that. And then when my discernment with the UCC is over, I may already be an ordained minister, but I'll still be in discernment. And that's fine because I basically am seeking dual ordination, and it's a little bit of an odd situation. And then I start talking to the Committee on Ministry. So the key difference is the discernment committee actually walks with me through discernment for at least a year. So unlike discernment in the UU space, where the discerning committee is the minister you tell you want to be a minister, and then you enter in discussions, and if they're nice to you, they allow you to shadow them, and they give you a role on the pastoral
And then
care
the congregation
committee.
endorses you.
They have to do that eventually. I mean, it's not, yes, and it's a lot different in the UCC. So that would be a key difference, is that you are walked through the process with a group of people from within the congregation, who then go to the committee on ministry and say, Erik is now ready to talk to you.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that.
So I'm going to finish my internship, and then I still have to work with my discernment committee to even get. So now this is just delved into, this is like, we're going to have to break this into two parts. Then the committee on ministry, which is similar to the MFC, the difference would be they will meet with me over time for a period of probably at least a year, most likely longer. And they will ask me to, I assume, do things. Have I read the proper texts? Have I got my MDiv? Yes, I will have my MDiv by then, by this December. And then eventually they give me basically an answer. And the difference would be, the key difference is they've met with me for a long period of time at fairly regular meetings, I believe, from reading the manual on ministry. Yes and no. If I start getting negative signals from them, it lasts for a long time versus a 1 hour meeting and then you get an answer.
True.
That's a key difference. So,
well, and that doesn't even, let's be real for a second, that doesn't even go into like, discernment is a huge thing. And then that doesn't even go into the changes that happen to you as you go through seminary.
Wait. How many 10-minute talks are we going to shove into this one 10-minute talk?
You're right.
And here's the thing: if we're going to do a 10-minute talk on the changes that happen to you in ministry, they're not like weird mutations or anything.
Oh, no.
But we might want to have some. We might want to have a couple of guests on for that, because I think that I'm not saying we're unique. I'm saying we've already been talking about some of them, probably in some ways.
Yeah, I would love to have people on to talk about that. The changes that happen to you while you go through the process that is seminary. Especially if you're fully committed to it and fully engaged in it, the process through that 4 years is.
It is an incredible process.
It is pretty intense.
Yeah.
Pretty intense, because you're confronting things that sometimes you didn't even know you should be confronting about yourself.
It's a period, I would call it a period of intense growth.
It is.
If you do it right. If you want to go through it and keep your blinders on, can I use that word?
I don't know. Well, yeah, because it's a horse. It's a word.
Horse thing. If you want to only focus in one direction, then you will miss some of the things that are happening out in this area. And that's a whole other discussion that we can have, I think. But I think we're probably at the end of this talk. Yes. I'm going to guess we're way over. You've sat through all of this, because we're going to have a talk about this, Erien. We're going to start to have product giveaways. I'm not kidding. Look for it. Coming soon. Coming soon. I promise.
Are you making buttons and stickers? Is that what you're telling me?
No. We're going far beyond buttons and stickers.
I'm scared.
No. We're going all the way SpaceX. We're going to Mars. Don't worry. Yeah. We're not giving away Xboxes or PlayStation 5s. That's way beyond Mars. That's like Saturn's rings or something. We're talking like t-shirts or something.
Oh, okay.
We're going to make some cool t-shirts and start giving them away.
So that actually brings up the fact, he brought up Mars. That actually brings up the fact that we're going to be doing more Let's Play videos as we close out. That's what I'm going to close this out on. Okay.
More Let's Play videos and more history videos, and also the labor series we talked about doing, but I'm behind because I've been sick, but I have to do it. But my teacher gave me a couple of extra days. She's like,
you were sick though, not COVID.
No, I've been super sick. And when you go 2 years without being sick, all the way through COVID, and like a year before that, I wasn't really sick, and then you get sick, your body's like, what's sickness? I don't remember. Let me tell you what sickness is all about. And you basically, it's a disaster.
I feel so bad for you.
I want to cough so badly right now.
I'm so sorry.
I want to go get more COVID tests tomorrow just to prove to myself I don't have it. I'll get like 3 in one day.
I'm so
I'll just go through the line over and over and over
It's
again.
okay. Oh no.
Yeah, here it comes. All right,
So Ministerial Authority. I'll be curious to hear
we're
any
done.
comments. Bye.
Oh, comments. Yeah, we need comments and likes and subscribes. Don't forget.